first question is, do we need to do something about carbon leakage, and what is the carbon leakage problem? The carbon leakage problem is primarily being brought about by a series of market distortions in some of the larger carbon emitters in the world, particularly obviously China, but to some extent India and other places as well. And so if the question is, should we do something about the distortions in those markets that lead to carbon leakage, then absolutely the answer is yes. However, what I would submit is that we need to do something that is more forensic and deals with the actual issue of distortion and deals with the internalizing that particular externality. And there are many proposals. The EU CBAM is only one. In our modelling of the effect of the EU CBAM in terms of its impact on GDP per capita for UK households, it has a pretty significant effect because it will increase the cost of very basic items, things like steel, etc., but also things like fertilisers, which will increase the cost for farmers in the UK considerably. So, and fertiliser costs are already high, so for them it'll increase energy costs substantially. So there's a real cost to this, and what I would advocate is that we look at different mechanisms, different tools to deal with carbon leakage, make the decision based on what achieves your goal of dealing with carbon leakage, while not imposing such severe constraints on the rest of your economy and on your households in terms of energy prices. I think there's been a sort of rush to just copy the EU CBAM because that's the carbon leakage mechanism that we know about. But if I go back to 2021, the Trade and Agriculture Commission, which was included the NFU, included many environmental groups, agreed a mechanism for dealing with carbon emissions and climate change that was more like a tariffication of the distortion mechanism that I'd sort of raised earlier.
Shanker,
I think that kind of
okay, is that alternative? How close are we to even knowing what that alternative mechanism is? You say that an alternative is desirable, but the EU CBAM is with us, and if we don't follow suit, are we not running the risk of other cheaper carbon-intensive products landing here on these shores if we don't do that?
Well, EU CBAM is with the EU and is scheduled for phasing in terms of tariffs and sectors. But we have to remember that there are currently six sectors that the CBAM applies to. EU CBAM applies to, but there are 42 products in the pipeline. So the danger here is that every industry that wants, to be protected will use this as the reason, and fairly soon we'll have a substantial increase in our tariffs across the piece, which will have a significant negative effect on the economy of the country. I think in terms of the alternatives that need to be investigated, that Trade and Agriculture Commission report, and it's a gov.uk, it's on gov.uk from 2021, has been sitting there, and it has the support of lots of different groups, NFU, environmental groups, consumer groups, etc. It was a hard-won consensus in the Trade and Agriculture Commission, and yet we haven't really done anything with it in the intervening 3 years. And I think that's disappointing to say the least. But there are other mechanisms as well around the world that look at pricing of carbon in other ways. And I think a decision of this magnitude needs not to be taken at the speed at which it is being taken, and there is an opportunity to go back to develop better tools, more forensic tools that deal with distortion, and I think the distortion mechanism that's proposed in the TAC report is the right way to go, and I absolutely commend that to this group.
Thank you. Lord Frost, I don't want to kind of bring you in
yes,
here.
sure.
And just basically, is there time to do this?